Kathy Vick, Deeply Awake, and I have to share with you the surprise I feel with the amount of peace I know. There is something about having a question answered. And either you know about this or you don't, but I've had questions that have pushed me into places that I had to go because I had to know the answers. Why? Because I had weird things happen to me, really weird, and I was paying attention, and I had teachers. So let me explain, because I'm going to talk about the new earth. It's been bugging me, the new earth. That's too much like heaven and hell. Sorry, guys, I can't. Can't do it. Can't do it. You go the new earth. That's really super shiny, clean, with all the nice people. If you're good, if you do your work, if you figure it out, you get saved if you're clever enough and good enough. But you're never really sure if you are or not. And then there's the bad earth, where bad things happen and wars go on. You guys, may I bring to your attention that we have perpetuated the heaven and hell myth? Thank you. All right, so it has to be something else. It's here, it's talked about, and now Hawaii's pooping out new earth, so there's something to it. It's an insert. What does it really mean? What's it really mean? Well, I'm trying to remember what got me onto the kick. And it didn't take me very long to do the research. And now it's just been like walking around it, kind of reeling as the meaning of what has come to my attention hits me. It's sort of like that. The research has not been all consuming. I was into a heavy research period, and I was getting a lot of benefit from it. Things were really coming online and coming together, but I wasn't there yet. And then it was very gratifying. The more answers I got, the more coherent I saw things. So the less dissonant, the more resonant. And that came from encompassing all of it, considering all of it, rather than picking the one that I think is best. Let me explain. I watched a video, which I'll put up, that Tyler did over at Secure Team 10 on the Mandela effect, and it is really well done. If you've never studied the Mandela effect, it's kind of helpful if you do, but it will warp your brain. And then if you're alive and you have if you read, like me, I grew up reading the Bible. I mean, I didn't go to a Bible thumping sect, but we went to a very devout sect of Christianity where, you spend some time reading the good book, bits and pieces, and that's when I knew. And I heard about the Mandela effect, and I heard it affected the Bible, and I went, and it affects the Bible. It's not the same Bible. Check it out. If you're someone who was alive and you read your Bible as a child, and you know those passages. Well, they're not all changed, but one of them that is the Lord's Prayer. And that was a geometric pattern holder. That was like a really foundational tent peg, and just for energy. It was really important, and it was coded, and it's disturbed. It's not the same, and it has a different meaning now than it did before. It's much more us and them than it used to be. Check it out. That's what sold me on it, that yeah, there really is something here. There is something here. So I watched that video, and that was very nice to have sort of a place to go where you can see it just really well explained very well and very concisely without any of the woo-woo. Just like, isn't this weird? What do you think of this? Huh, check this out. It's nice. So I began to think about the Mandela effect. I began to think, how it started was there was a woman who went to a Dragon Con, and she found out, as she did some talking with people, for some reason she found out that her reality was not the same as other people's. Her memories were not the same, because she remembered that Nelson Mandela died in prison, and there were a bunch of people who didn't, who she learned from them that Nelson Mandela, in fact, had not died in prison. He had gone on to lead a nation. Okay. Kind of weird, huh? And I'm one of them who, I remember him being in prison. I remember it was pretty grim. And him being a leader it's like they're disconnected events for me. I don't connect the two people. That's how it's always been in my little brain. And then there's Tiananmen Square. And there's lots of other ones. There's Berenstein Bears and Febreze, and it goes on and on and on and on. So it's continuing. It's still happening. But there was Tiananmen Square. And just for me, personally for me, I didn't want to know the outcome. I knew that there had been a massacre, and I knew that it was bad, and I knew that there was a man who stood in front of a tank, but I never knew the outcome. And there are some places that I'm okay with not going. That was a question that was really okay for me to have open. I didn't want to know. Now I come to find out that there are people in this world who remember seeing the footage of him being run over. Kids who were in class who were told they couldn't see all of the video because it's lengthy, because it got gory. And if you go check Google, you'll find out that that's not what happened. And that began a process of pulling things together. And I need to talk about it. And it's very, very weird. So if you're into that kind of thing, super great. If you're not, okay. But because it's my life, it became really important for me to understand what was going on. And that's why I did the studies I did. And that's, it sort of fed itself, I guess. Okay. I want you to imagine a world in which Nelson Mandela died in prison, murdered basically by apartheid, murdered by the machine, another one, still happening. And then imagine a world where a tank rolls over a citizen on global TV. What message does that send to humanity? After they've seen JFK, RFK, MLK slaughtered one by one. The lights go out. What would that do to a consciousness? That's what I began to think. What would be possible for those people, and what would be absolutely unthinkable for them? Too dangerous to think. And then I began to see that this parallel reality stuff, well, I've experienced it. I know of it. I had an experience that this was in the 90s, and it was in 1994. One night I was writing, and I was in a very high creative state. I was really happy and expanded and big. And suddenly I got this wild hair that it would be very nice to go to a bookstore and just kind of walk around. And I wanted to go to the 12th House bookstore, which was a great metaphysical bookstore here in town. So I got in my car, and I drove. And I've realized now that that's what happened. I drove. And I parked my car, and I went into the bookstore, and it was a very weird experience. It was kind of hostile. I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel at all welcome. And I wanted to get out of there. I didn't buy anything. And I remember very specifically a magazine rack that was in a circle. And I left. And I went outside to get into my car, and I couldn't find my car. It wasn't there. It simply wasn't there. And all I knew to do was to go back in the bookstore. I didn't really consider, oh, this has been a theft or whatever. I just thought I need to go back in the bookstore. So I did. And the magazine rack was specifically was on the wall. Everyone was friendly. I bought something. I went upstairs. There was some sort of activity class thingy that was being offered upstairs. And it was like a family again. And I left the place, and I got in my car, and there's my car. And I went, wow, that's weird. And I trotted right off to the teachers and said, we need to have a talk about this. And they said, yeah, you just were in a parallel reality right then. You were actually living it. Huh. Well, that kind of sticks with you. It's like having a UFO encounter. What are you supposed to do with that? You know, depending on who you're around, it may be a good thing or a bad thing. It all depends. And it seems to depend. It seems to matter a lot to the people around you. If you were to say something, they'd care one way or the other. That's how it used to be. So I just walked with that. I mean, what are you supposed to do with it? And then I had a singular experience where my timelines merged. That's not supposed to happen. That's not supposed to happen. And all kinds of memories that I just didn't have. I just didn't have them. They were suddenly available to me again. It's like a whole life bloomed and blossomed in my awareness, and I was suddenly more than I was. Odd. And all that research led me to the harmonic convergence. And all these events I've been looking at the signature of, the astrological signature of. The harmonic convergence. That was 1987. And 2 years later, 2 years later, was Tiananmen Square and the Berlin Wall. And it was when I saw the date for the Berlin Wall, and I thought, there's something going on here. So, something was done at that harmonic convergence. Look at the date. It's November 9/11. 12 years later came 9/11. And I always felt that was an insertion. That's the word that I always got with that. That was an insertion into our reality of something that wasn't supposed to be there. And it started with Oklahoma City, and it's been there the whole time with those assassinations. But it was like on steroids when it came back in 9/11. And I saw the Berlin Wall. And I connected to the harmonic convergence. And then I started thinking about the experiments that were done in the 40s with the timelines. Interesting. Montauk, and there were a couple where, they were given a toy that had actually caused some problems in the past. When you start messing with the dimensions, that can cause a problem. And because it's in ham-handed, childish hands, they opened up a timeline. So here's what I think. I think, sure, you can say, the whole species had gone a little mad by the 40s. It was a pressure cooker. And it was clear that there was a decision point. It was clear that as a group, as a group, there was a psychosis. They'd gone mad. And once again, they were exterminating themselves. They're picking out in this case, it was the intelligentsia. And it got really homicidal. Well, I've had some thoughts about that. I think that these timeline openings were part of it. I think that there was a mass, it was clear that the experiment had run its course by the end of the 30s. And all you have to do is open up a New Age book and it'll talk about the volunteer souls who heard a call and came in to help at this time. That's part of the mythology too, and you can say that that's the mythology of angels, but I mean, it is consistent that there's elders who came in to assist because there was a call that was placed that we are in trouble, we need help now, it's time, it's time, it's time. So I want you to just consider this for a minute. Imagine that there are souls coming in who are so big that they can consciously be aware of more than one timeline. That's one of the requirements of incarnation if you want to come in and help humanity. You've got to be able to hold awareness or the heart and the ability to bring together all timelines. And there's at least two that are active. Who here is able and willing and ready? That's what I think happened. Because I'm not the only one who has lived twin life, who has everything in twos, or who have, like, that's what I think the complaint is with the old souls of the first wave, who just were like mildly suicidal the whole time and didn't want to be here and didn't know why. And you look at their lives and go, wow, that's a good life. Damn, they did a good job. And they're sitting there going, wah, wah, wah. This sucks. I hate this shit. There's a reason for that. You're holding two consciousnesses and you're not aware of it. That's what I think. And to make me slightly mad, I was aware of both, on and off, and more, because I want to remind people at this point what timeline we're on. What I would have become had I when I am in the other timeline where those dastardly events kept occurring and a general sense of suffocation happened, well, that just makes a pressure cooker. That just makes for a lot of skirmishes and upsets and dastardly deeds and big ahas, okay? It's just a bumpier ride, that's all. But it's darker and harder. Well, I think that kind of pressure is not great, and I think that might be part of the drag that we feel, and what we've come here to heal. It's a manifestation of that dark energy, and that's okay. It's healable. It's fine. See, I had this event in, I don't know if it was 2012 or 2013, maybe even, I don't think it was 14, I think it was 13. When I was put on a meditative journey, and funnily enough, what happened was I saw myself. I was a nurse. I was heavier. I was just a firecracker. And, and I really loved nursing. And I wanted nothing more than to go on. And I realized I was holding her back and making her miserable. And she was holding me back and making me miserable. And I don't want the things she wants. And I would be arguing with her the whole time. Hey, look over there, look over there, look over there. And she would just feel gypped. in my life. Because what mattered to her were things that I didn't, that I'd outgrown, really. And I was judgmental, really. I was glad that she was going. I really was. As I saw her on this runway, this runway, and then this lighted runway, like a fashion runway, leading to 3 palm fronds, like I don't know, like bad 80s Art Deco is what I've said, but an Art Deco three pieced palm thing. And I felt very gratified to watch her walk into that light. I was glad. Well, I didn't really realize what that was. And I have held her in disdain and thought of her as simple. And I met up with her yesterday again. Because I really thought about these timelines a lot. Can you tell? How do you heal a timeline? What's important to her? Well, I finally asked. And she reminded me what nursing used to be like for me. It was the holiest, most sacred act. And it was hours and hours and hours of worship. It was my sanctuary. It's where I went to go to be with God. That's how it used to be like for me. And it still is when I'm around someone who's ill. And she had decided that the best thing she could do would be to elevate her time on the wheel. She found herself on the wheel again. And there's nothing you can do about that except elevate the experience. And that's exactly what she was doing. And to me, she looked like a sage. And in a blue-white robe. And she did this. And she meant it. She meant it. And I was humbled. So, I don't want to talk bad about nursing anymore. Only that it just didn't fit me anymore. And it was more and more constraint. And I was more and more unhappy with the way that workers were being treated. That was my issue, always. That we weren't being good to each other. We weren't being taken care of by the people we were sacrificing for. And we weren't expecting hugs and kisses from our patients. But some respect from the people who were benefiting from our work would have been nice. And that became more onerous to me. And it became something a system that I saw as bankrupt, morally bankrupt, without a heart anymore, feeding on itself. And there are strains of that, even in medicine. It's unfortunate. But I had found a way to be within that structure in a sacred way. And it was distressing when I began to just not care. And it affected my work. And I didn't like the work anymore. I couldn't believe in it anymore. On a soul level, I could no longer feel it was appropriate to hold me legally or morally responsible for another person's owie. If I endanger someone and intentionally harm them, then sure. But if I'm just standing there holding witness to their experience and they're experiencing a lot of problems, hey, that's not on me. I'm holding space. And I just didn't like the setup anymore. Well, that's a philosophical discussion for, I don't know, the ages, not for when you got to go to work. But that's what I was beginning to struggle with. And I also, began to think, what does it really mean? I never considered myself a healer, just somebody who could lift people's spirits in a moment of a difficult conversation they were having with themselves. That's kind of how I saw things. So I didn't think I healed anything. I was just nice to people when they had troubles. And I still think it's kind of presumptuous to assume that I can make anything right in someone else. But I can lend my insight if they want it, and my humor, which often helps. And just not taking it serious, but in a very kind-hearted way. Reminding people what the truth is. We actually love each other. Oh, we're actually trying to get along with each other. Oh, you know what I mean? So, I guess this came about because I realized one morning there's nothing wrong with me. And I've been trying to improve something that isn't, there's nothing wrong with it. Well, all right. I suppose you could dress that up and make it a 2-hour play if you'd like. But it came to me one morning finally after, I don't know, years of contemplating the thought, oh, it really is true. This is a very unusual place to be. I'm not critical of myself anymore. Huh. Oh, I approve of myself. I'm in agreement. I am in agreement with this. Not with a boisterous, hey, look, I'm the best. Just with, yeah. I'm not arguing anymore. I realized that came from sort of saying the words about Adam and Eve. There's more I want to say about that particular tableau, but for now, just putting those things together was sufficient. I had a puzzle, and it was a big one, and the pieces were scattered all over, not only space but time. It took a long time to put it together. And it doesn't mean that that I know everything. It means I finally have a structure for the experiences that I've had and the way I am just by nature. So I really have been able to let things go, but then here comes the timeline thing. And I think that I can really begin to forgive myself for this mean, petty, scared, scary person I can become. This bent up, pissed off little monster who lurks. What's that about? Well, I'm highly Plutonian in my former biological makeup and in my consciousness. And I think that's part of it. And what I mean by that is that hey, around here where there's light, there's dark, and the dark gets pretty twisty, and that's okay by me. Basically, I don't engage, but I'm aware of it, and I think to not be aware of it is pretty naive. That's kind of me. And I kind of scare some light workers because of that, because I can go dark. Well, I think that's my purpose. To insert, isn't that what we all did? So that's what I want to talk about, to close. It has to do with wave theory and bringing this all together. All right. There is a maxim, or a truth, in the world of biological decoding and the new science the new science, energetic science, consciousness science, whatever you want to call it. And it's Enrique Boron, Bouron, is someone who is the best, most current big kahuna in the practice. And he talks about a patient who he talked about he has case studies up the wazoo. One of the case studies was a woman who kept having headaches at the base of her brain, and they were crippling, and she had gone to all kinds of specialists, and there was no answer. So she was well documented medically. Her name had in its base, it was a Spanish name, and it had at its base the concept of confession under torture. I mean, Buran went, boom, okay, that's what that means. Okay, all right, so that's interesting. So what Boron does is he goes back. He looks for fractals, basically. He's a fractal hunter. And one of the ways that he does that is that he's found, or the science has found, that the huge, like nuclear bomb karmic events that happen with great grandparents are often resolved with the great grandchildren. Now, what that he didn't make the leap, but what that tells me, knowing about soul sharing, multiplicity of reincarnation, and continuity within a group to complete something, a spiritual mission, the great grandparents reincarnate as the great grandchildren. Because usually people don't really remember. The kids don't. The ones who are going to move, not usually. There's enough time to rest and then come back in and carry out the completion. So in this case, she had these headaches. And Buran went back and looked, and sure enough, a great-grandfather had been tortured and had confessed in war time, and the method of execution had been a device that was attached to the back of his head, and there was a screw that was put in there, and that's how he was tortured, and that's how he died. And that's what was plaguing her. And just having that information, don't you think that would help a little bit? It's its own antidote, its own cure. But then, if you begin to realize that perhaps you came in by agreement to fix this, to make it right, whether you were the great-grandfather or not. Because, see, a call went out. A call went out. Come help us. It was very dark around here. How do you think World War I and then World War II happened? It was pretty dark around here. Openly so hateful. The way that Jewish people were treated in Europe is just, it's beyond the pale. And it's just a group of men who are having a turf war, basically. But a call went out. Please come in and help. Those who can handle it, only those who can handle it need apply. We need to raise the vibrations around here. We need receptors. We need open receivers who can receive. And just as before, just as you do when you're going to seed a planet, you incarnate into matter that may not even be oriented to you. It's a story that you take on because it's particularly dark or nasty, or you're going to be in situations that are dark and nasty, and you're there to spread light. That's your job. That's another maxim, that's another truth within light workers. We come here to be a light in dark places. That's the job, to be a light in dark places. Well, my contention is that maybe there were timelines and maybe there weren't, but it was pretty dark around here. And there was the potential for it getting even darker. There were 2 timelines. Imagine that. Imagine it. If they'd rolled over that guy. That's a coup de grace. And 2 years later, in this timeline, not only did that tank swerve, and and everything ended after that, the protests, and it just was like, okay, we're now what do we do? 2 years later, the Berlin Wall fell. I really, really don't think it's an accident that 12 years later on the mirror number, 9/11 happened. It's like a big energetic FU to mercy. We're not done yet. We have a couple more things to say. Well, there may be timelines and maybe they know how to jump them. I don't know. But they're pests. And they've infected things. And so I think that's what this is all about, is the merging of timelines. See, I have proof that this is what's one of the things that's led to peace. I have proof that I'm on the right track, that I'm really okay. You know, my kid came in, and it was like a switch. And there were certain things that just weren't going to be healthy anymore, and other things that we were going to do. We were going to go places that I hadn't considered. I thought were off limits. And suddenly they were not off limits anymore. And I'm convinced it's because he came along. Because I was prepared to stay on the wheel, in supplication and in humility and in joy, and to elevate my time on the wheel. That was the idea. No, I think not. You don't remember. You don't remember, Mom. I'm going to remind you. Kind of like that. Who knows? But on this special Mother's Day, it's, for me, proof that I'm on the right track, and it really is okay to be saying these things, doing what I've decided to do, expressing the way I express. It's really okay. It's permitted. This is the reality where it's permitted. And I think that, you know, what I've said, what Barb Marcianic said about, you know, this reptilian force or whatever coming back, they're merging. I think that's true too. The dark always seeks out the light. It's the opposite of what it wants to be. What happens when darkness becomes self-aware? Because this is the part that's so beautiful to me. On all timelines, these timelines are peopled by human beings with human DNA. And I keep reminding myself of what that thought experiment that was done when, in, I believe it was Australia, a group of people were shown a poster that had, it would appear, about 9 faces on it in a clump, kind of. Here's the poster, and then there's a clump with different faces. Well, really, that picture was made up of, almost 100 faces. There were lots and lots and lots of faces. But if you didn't have it pointed out to you, it would be hard to see them. You know of little things like that, don't you? And so the experiment went that they showed the poster to these people in Australia, and then miles and miles and miles away in Great Britain, they showed the same poster on closed circuit TV to people and pointed out all the faces. And then they did the experiment in Australia again. And the people who were looking at the poster saw a whole bunch of faces, not just 9. I'm reminded of that because I said, I'm broadcasting this. People on my frequency or adjacent are going to get this information because I say so. Well, you know, it's sort of like once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once you realize something, you can't unrealize it. And I think that, you know, at a fundamental level, there are so many of us having these kind of coherent experiences where our timelines are merging, our sense of forgiveness for what we've done to ourselves and other people is swelling. That's what magnetic resonance is. You could call it that, or induction, DNA induction, the spreading of an idea like wildfire, and what was once impossible is now possible. Just like that. Boom. There was a day that an American or a European or an African couldn't get on a plane and go anywhere. They were grounded. And then something happened. And the day afterwards, they could be up in the sky. Moments like that, before and after, when something was possible and now suddenly is not. But better, when something is impossible, can't be on your radar because it's not thinkable. And then suddenly it is. Because the people coming in now, I think, are coming in with fused timelines too, with only one. That was the point of 2012. Of moving on to something far, excuse me, bigger than what we've been doing. We were able to heal it through simple consciousness. The consciousness that can do nothing but transmute once it realizes that what it's going through, what it's aware of, is not isolated. That's a big deal. So it can lead to a sense of wobbliness. Oh my God, there's two realities. Well, I don't know, maybe there's lots. But there are fracture points. There are moments. I've been aware of them. You can feel them. It's like everything shifts. And what was one way is now another. It happened in the 80s for me. It was like a tectonic shift of the earth, and then everything smelled different, looked different. It was just different. I was different. And it wasn't particularly great, I didn't think. And there was another one that happened late August of 2000 for me. But I think that kind of is just when physical reality is catching up with what's real. And so I do think that the merging of the timelines is there is truth to it, and that the truth is actually corporeal, and that we've been living perhaps darker worlds. We live in darker worlds than we do right now, and to be grateful for that, we are remind yourself of the things that have gone right. Remind yourself of the things that went right, because that's the timeline we're on, where the madness of people taking advantage of one another ends. And we do that by recognizing that it's there and holding it accountable and taking over in generosity and good humor and good faith. And maybe that's 400 years off. I don't know. How long is it going to take people to wake up? That's the question. How many people are looking at that closed circuit TV picture and having the light bulb go on and realizing, oh, there's more going on here than I thought. Wow, that's a lot to take in. Wow, that's weird how I didn't see that at first. It's kind of like that. So I'm really surprised I was able at 44, 33 get all this out in this amount of time. I'm very pleased. I am feeling sort of a kind of a warrior's peace and pride. knowing full well that, if you need to throw down, you've already lost. Sorry. I will always best you. And if I don't, well then, consider yourself lucky. We'll go again. But needing to best me, needing to do that, shows me how little you understand. I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to be your friend. You want to pick a fight with me? Oh my, that wastes time. It just wastes time. So it's that kind of thing. It's just a moving on, perhaps, and being a bit more generous to the things I see going around me. That used to just infuriate me or make me feel victimized, or and there's some stuff that's just straight up creepy. And if you feel victimized, the very first thing you should do is to really critically look at your situation and be honest with yourself. Are you being victimized? It's possible, Are you? Well then, don't beat yourself up for feeling victimized. Give yourself a high five for bringing it to your own attention. Now what are you going to do about the situation, dear? So, isn't this fun? Oh my. It's very pleasant to finally understand a few things for me. And I like the idea that part of the gig is just maturing to the place where you can be a competent translator of the information. I like that a lot better than, my job is to ascend onto a mountain and glow. No, it's to become a competent translator of a reality that may not be something that other people are experiencing to the degree I experience. And, so there you go. I will end by telling you that one of the experiences of this time was really quite a gift and really beautiful. When I actually saw all of these, you can call them timelines or reality experiences and identities merge sort of with me, because I had a sense of deep reality that I hadn't had before when I thought about, well, many things. I saw wheels within wheels. As I realized that I had been the one to experience an event that had to do with Antares, and that this was meaningful to me, and yet it was about that whole experience, and that was revolving while I was also experiencing these other like rivers of knowledge and experience and belief, and I got to see what it is that I have allowed myself to become and what I chose. That's the idea. It's about choice and why you choose what you choose. The person who was driving that tank in Tiananmen Square was the real star. They had a choice. Could have gone one way or the other based on a decision. If they had decided to run over that citizen, it would have meant that that person was giving away their humanity to satisfy their fear of someone who had told them to be aggressive. They chose aggression, but I think that goes against human nature, so what they were really choosing was to act in fear. And, The tank driver didn't leap out of the tank and dance with the protester. No, he continued to menace the protester, but stood down. That comes from a person who values that person in front of them more than the machine. And we live in that reality. And I don't think it's wise to forget that. I think that we have had insertions of a lower energy just because it's over. It's over, guys. On both timelines, the DNA is activating. The lights are coming up. The veil is lifting. And the dark is fighting tooth and nail to become self-aware. It's actually quite self-aware, and it knows it's outdrawn. So while the light comes up, it does damage. So I don't really see any one person as, I can't see myself as all bad. I can't see you as all bad. I can't see anybody as all bad. And further now, thinking about this timeline thing, I can understand why it could get confusing for people and why they would go dark sometimes and forget and misbehave. Okay. This is a process that if you have the chops, if you have the words, if you have the proclivity, maybe you can put thoughts to it and structure to it and have it not drive you mad. And I think for a lot of people, here's the story. If my dreams came true, if I got what I wanted, part of the nice part about that is I don't have to go searching anymore, do I? I can just relax. I can just sit here. Grab a chair. Let's have a talk. But as I'm becoming more and more at peace, what I'm finding is that I'm more and more connected to the future. And as my memory comes back, the future comes back. And I have a belief in it now. I'm finally allowing myself to believe that the future will happen. Because for a long time I didn't. I couldn't let myself go there. I don't know why. But lately, it's become really plain to me that not only is the future right here, but it's not asking anymore. It's requiring that I participate. So it's just I'm okay with it being new. Now that I've gotten this word out about timelines and stuff, now I really can just release what has come before and just go forward new, bigger, because I don't think that we're choosing from one or the other. I think one is the non-ascension path, and I think that lots of people choose the ascension path. I think that people who are capable of it have twin lives, and you can have a non-ascended, non-sparkly, non hooked up life. And if I'd made other choices, I would have been that. And I have evidence that I did that. And I use that experience in a very beautiful way. But they're choices. Those decision moments, it's going to be one way or the other based on what you say. Is it yes or is it no? Is it go or is it pass? And from there, realities flow. So where is your head when you're making your choices? Is it believing that you're flawed and need to improve yourself and fix yourself so that you can finally be loved? I wouldn't know anything about that. Or is it something else? These are beautiful thoughts to be having. I'm so grateful. Namaste.